And stocking O2 sensors is something that I've always found to be important to life safety. Jason, I'm going to let you take the rest of the presentation. Go ahead and take it away. I'm going to give you a control right now.
All right. Thank you, everybody. As Andrew already said, I am Jason Felton with MSA. I'm the regional sales manager for the Upper Midwest. And as Andrew already mentioned, we're going to be talking about our electrochemical sensors and how and why you can stock an O2 sensor now, among other things. So when we talk about how to stock O2 sensors, we got to talk about how O2 sensors actually work. In the past, O2 sensors were typically good for, they had a 1-year warranty, maybe an 18-month to 24-month lifespan. And the reason why you couldn't stock them is because electrochemical sensors by nature are detecting gas whether they're plugged in or not. And now in our new oxygen sensor, we can actually not have that sensor deplete when it's sitting on the shelf because it's not active and it's not consuming itself. So when we say not consuming, you see this makeshift recycle logo in front of you. We have a non-consuming reaction. So what we have actually happening is the oxygen molecule goes into the sensor, actually adds an electron and creates water within the electrolyte. And then because we changed the anode and cathode material from lead to a proprietary material that doesn't oxidize under this chemical reaction, we don't have any depleting sensor with this oxygen sensor. So because we're not active until we're plugged in, you can actually maintain those sensors on the shelf, if you will. So because of that non-consuming reaction that we have, we actually tagged our sensor with a 3-year warranty. We have a 4 years expected life, and really that 4 years expected life really means you're going to change that sensor out in 4 years. We actually have 5 years expected life. You typically replace them before you start seeing that sensor drift on you. And so when we say you can stock those sensors, we still have that, like I said, the 3-year warranty. So you'll have it on your shelf. We're warranted from the 3 years from the date of shipment. But even if that sensor's been sitting on your shelf and it's outside of the warranty period, you still should get that 4 years of expected life. Now, we've launched these sensors in 2017. Prior to that, we were testing, and those sensors that we actually had on the shelf, we routinely check them to see if they're still alive or not, and we haven't been able to fail them since development of this new platform. So in the past, if you had a spare sensor on the shelf, you may have got 6 months, maybe less out of that spare sensor on the shelf. Now you should be able to get the full life of your oxygen sensor, which in the world of oxygen sensing is a pretty big deal. Moving on, we want to talk about our TrueCal technology, and then we're also going to be following up at the end of it with how to install or what the perfect install might look like. Moving on, going to talk about TrueCal, but before we can really talk about TrueCal, we have to talk about what a manual calibration actually does. So manual calibration actually serves two functions. One, we want to make sure that the gas from the bottle and the tubing can reach the sensor. That's maybe a less thought of one. And then, of course, we want to adjust for the sensitivity. And the sensitivity we're adjusting for is either the electrolyte loss from sensing gas itself, or temperature and humidity changes within its own environment. That's the purpose of why we do a calibration. Now what we have is manual calibration versus TrueCal. When we talk about TrueCal, if you note in the top right corner of your screen, TrueCal function happens only for carbon monoxide and hydrogen sulfide sensors only. Going back down to the meat of the slide here, TrueCal actually inside of what the TrueCal function does, part of that function is what we call a pulse check. So that pulse check happens 4 times a day, every 6 hours, over a 24-hour period, and repeats itself. And that's basically a self-checking function versus and manual calibration that you would typically do maybe once a quarter, maybe once a month, depending on what type of sensor you have or what time of the year it is. Now we're checking the sensor every 6 hours for life and health and adjusting for the sensitivity. So when we talk about adjusting for sensitivity, we're talking about the electrolyte loss in the sensor itself, or humidity or temperature changes that could cause the sensor to drift. So we talk about the adaptive environmental compensation. That's a chip that we put inside of these CO and H2S sensors that actually does this pulse check that performs what we call as TrueCal. So when we look at what the pulse check does, we see that the heartbeat on the left side, every 6 hours, it sends a pulse to the sensor. And based upon the last calibration of the actual sensor, it creates a threshold. And if that sensor cannot detect gas, one, it's going to send an alarm out. That's something that you haven't seen before with an MSA sensor. If it falls outside of tolerance that needs to be calibrated, the sidebar lights of the transmitter will pulse a slow green pulse to give a visual indication that it needs to be calibrated. And then if the sensor falls within its own tolerance, that it can adjust for the sensitivity loss, whether it be temperature and humidity or electrolyte loss, it'll make that change internally and you won't even see it, and it'll just keep on trucking. So when we talk about manual versus TrueCal, which one would you guys rather see? Would you rather be doing your own calibrations every 3 months, or would you rather be able to extend your calibrations out? Because with this TrueCal function and the pulse check, with this function alone, you can push calibrations out to 1 year without having to do a quarterly calibration. And we can push that out even farther, moving into this next portion. So the other half of why we did a calibration was to ensure gas reaching the sensor. Well, now to incorporate this whole TrueCal function, we have something called diffusion supervision, where we're monitoring a sound wave within the sensor to ensure that the sensor gas can reach the sensor itself. Sorry, I got to back up a slide here. Sorry. So the way this works is we emit a sound from the speaker port, and that travels over the frit of the sensor, and that's picked up by the microphone. And what that actually does is it's looking for a frequency change on the sensor itself. So if it's free and clear, the sound won't change. And if the sensor is blocked, like you see here on the screen, you might see some ice buildup, sludge, dirt, mud, snow, whatever it might be, could be blocking that sensor. That frequency of sound is going to change, and we're going to be able to pick that up. And then when diffusion supervision picks up this, it's going to need 4 consecutive failures. So when TrueCal does that pulse check every 6 hours, in a 24-hour period, it has to fail all 4 of them for us to go into diffusion supervision fault and alert any user that the sensor is blocked. But with this portion enabled, we just recently changed to a 2-year calibration. So we can actually have our CO and H2S sensors go with full 2 years without needing to be calibrated. If you're monitoring the TrueCal and or the pulse check, and you're monitoring the diffusion supervision. That's big news in the world of electrochemical sensors. Going to talk about what a perfect install might look like. First, we want to talk about, before I advance to the next slide, the perfect install might be a gas that's lighter than air. You might remote mount the sensor that you see on the transmitter in the ceiling, or if the sensor or if the gas we're monitoring is heavier than air, you might want to remote that sensor from the transmitter and put it near the floor. Those are pretty simple things to do. We also have opportunities or capabilities to pump a sample from maybe an area that's too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry, and bring that sample, condition it, and bring it to the sensor itself. So we have a nice clean sample to analyze. And then one of the other things that we might want to talk about is looking at flame and gas mapping. And so when we talk about flame and gas mapping, we can actually map out where you put your flame detectors, where you put your gas monitors. We can either do it in a couple different scenarios for gas. We can either do a geographic model where we're taking a specific radius of gas, whatever that's given to us by the end user. So if you want to take a 50-foot radius and cover the map with a bunch of different bubbles, that'll tell you where to put the gas monitors. Or we can do what you see on the screen here for the gas side is gas dispersion modeling, where we taking in account to where the airflow is in a building or the prevailing winds on an outdoor location, and tell us where the gas is going to go and propagate. And usually when we use this type of modeling, we can put less gas monitors into a scenario to ensure coverage and make sure we mitigate that safety. And that, of course, you see that puts the liability on us. This obviously is a paid service. So, and I guess at this point, we want to open it up to questions. I think Andrew's going to turn off the mute function for everybody.
Thank you very much, Jason, for going through that presentation with us. Yes, I am going to unmute everybody right now. And as I'm doing that, I have a couple of poll questions for you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and start the poll. And the first one should be on your screen. How long can you stock an MSA oxygen sensor? Let's go ahead and vote now. All right, we've got quite a few answers. Let's go ahead and show the results. So that's what we've got. We're thinking we can stock one for 3 years. I may have made this a trick question, but Jason, go ahead and elaborate. Oh. Jason, are you there? All right, hang on one sec, guys. I'm gonna give him a call.
Program, Andrew Zimmer.
Oh. Okay, you're there. We can hear you now. So some people just answered the question, the poll question of how long can you stock an MSA oxygen sensor? Most people think it's 3 years that you can stock one. Jason, would you care to elaborate? I see what's going on. Okay. Jason can't hear me unless I talk to him on the phone. So I'm going to ask him to mute his microphone, and he's going to talk.
Andrew Zimmer.
Andrew.
Jason, can you mute your microphone on Zoho? Okay, all right. So now we've got Jason here. Jason, I was asking everybody the poll question. Can you see it on your screen?
Poll question.
How long can you stock an MSA oxygen sensor?
That's really undetermined. Like I said, we're warranted for 3 years from the date of shipment. You still can expect to get the life out of that if you're just past the warranty. We're not fully committed yet to answer that as far as how long can something sit on a shelf that we don't know what the environmental conditions are. So we're going to fall back onto our warranty period of being 3 years, but knowing that you can stock these and still get your full life after the warranty is still something to be said, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. I think that I threw that question out there because this is very different. Nobody's used to stocking O2 sensors, and now that we can, and they come with a 3-year warranty, in theory, you can keep them in a dry, clean area, and they'll be fine stocking them. And we've done that, and that's the experience of the 3-year warranty. It starts it's from the point of purchase, or the date of purchase. The date of shipment. Thank you. So just wanted to let everybody know there isn't technically a warranty. There's a 3-year warranty from the date of shipment, and yes, you can stock them. Might be best to keep them, maybe not for 3 years, but we have found you can stock for 3 years, and they have worked. Not to say it would work every time, but good to talk about. Next poll question, we've got 2 more, and then I'll open it up to Q&A. Next poll question is, would the ability to stock an oxygen sensor make your everyday maintenance easier? I'm honestly curious of how people vote for this one. Okay,
And
boy.
it looks like most people are saying yes. And I would agree with that, because typically customers would like to stock oxygen sensors for emergency use. And typically, if you have an oxygen sensor on the shelf that's been sitting there from our old platform or from some other brand, you get a 1 year life out of that sensor, maybe 2 years if you're really lucky, because it's still sensing oxygen and creating a voltage. It's depleting while it's on the shelf. Knowing that you can have something on the shelf that's not active and depleting itself is going to drive to better performance. So yeah, it'll make your life easier.
Yeah, I mean, it's a simple change that can be made. And some people, they're very used to doing things the way they've been doing them for so long. But now that you can, I'm glad to hear people are saying yes, because if you take advantage of it, I don't see how it couldn't make your life easier. So thank you guys for the participation. Last poll question here. With TrueCal, and this was that somewhat automatic calibration that we talked about. So with TrueCal, how long can a sensor last between manual calibrations?
Slow
Exactly.
voting here. So, but if I could make a comment on that, how long can you go between manual calibrations? Well, that's what the TrueCal is really checking. So it's checking life and health of the sensor. It's checking to see if it can do its job, and then if it can't, it's going to alert you to the need to be calibrated. So if you're monitoring via heart, that's a heart register that can be viewed. Otherwise, you're going to see a visual indication that it needs to be calibrated. And then I see nobody says no manual calibration needed whatsoever. I want to flip that on its head here. We actually have, since the inception of this new platform, we've gone 1,200 days with one calibration, and the sensor has not needed calibration yet.
Wow.
With some of our test units that are on the roof in Pennsylvania, seeing all different types of weather: summer, fall, winter, dry, cold, wet.
Yeah, Pennsylvania is a lot like it is here in terms of temperature changes throughout the year. So yeah, so Jason did mention that you can push in the presentation. You can push manual calibration out to a year in some cases. Obviously, this is all going to change depending on what environment you're in and where the sensor is. But yeah, every 1 year is not uncommon. And Jason, I'm amazed to hear that 1,200 days and the sensor hasn't needed calibration. That's pretty impressive.
And that's following ISA standards, which is pretty stringent. And actually, if you take the TrueCal function with the pulse check and the diffusion supervision, we're recommending a two-year calibration period. Oxygen sensors in the past, we probably calibrated once a month. Our new recommendation is a 1 year calibration on oxygen sensors. So that's a big step there too, but that's not a self-checking sensor. When it comes to our CO and H2S sensors, if you're only monitoring the pulse check, we recommend a year. But then with diffusion supervision, we're recommending a 2 year calibration. And we're not just saying jump to the 1 year or 2 year intervals. A user of this equipment should work to the confidence to get to that level. So if you're starting with a quarterly calibration, bump it out a month. If you don't see any drift, bump it out another month until you get that history within your own facility to get that confidence of that sensor in your environment.
Okay. Yeah, and by the way, for everybody that's listening, this is a recorded presentation, so we are going to put it online and we're going to share a copy with you guys. And also, JMI has been doing calibrations for over 25 years or so. MSA, I suppose, has been doing calibrations for over 100. But we have a lot of experience working with this type of sensor. And we're happy to help you with your calibrations and educate you or come out and do them in any way that is needed for your site. We would be site specific. So if anything he said didn't quite make sense yet, we'll help you out with that. So we have a question coming in on the questions, and now I think everybody is unmuted, but we're going to go ahead and go with this question first. Question is, what is the max allowable distance between remote sensor and electronics unit? So this person is well educated on MSA, and it appears that so what you can do is you can mount a sensor away from the electronics. So for everybody looking at slide 17, that sensor, either of those sensors, they can be mounted remote or mounted directly to that head, or you can mount them, I don't know how many feet away. Jason, do you know?
328 feet each sensor.
Yeah, so you can mount up to 2 sensors from one transmitter. You can mount them each 328 feet. Is that different directions? Doesn't matter?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, so they could be anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, something that we didn't mention.
My one recommendation, even though we can go 328 feet, I would limit that to around 100 to 150 feet. So if you don't want to have 2 people doing the calibration, limit yourself to around 150.
Okay. Good to know. We have another question coming in. How does the sensor, TrueCal, indicate that it requires calibration? And I'm going to go back to the TrueCal slides. Jason, is there one in particular?
We can just stay right there, actually.
Right here?
No, the one with where we see the face of the transmitter.
Oh, okay. This one.
Yep. So
Okay.
when the TrueCal says it needs to be calibrated, you see the sidebar lights of that Ultima X 5000. The sidebar lights will slowly pulse. So they'll be on and off pulse, almost like a heartbeat, if you will. And that'll give a visual indication that it needs to be calibrated. If they can't be calibrated,
will they stay green, or will they turn different colors?
they will stay green.
Okay.
Because needing to be calibrated is not a fault. So they won't turn amber, they won't turn red. Red is your alarm condition. Amber is your fault condition. If the sensor's fully failed, yes, those sidebar lights will start flashing amber or yellow. It'll drop the milliamp signal below 4 to 3.5. If you're monitoring heart, you'll be able to get that information via heart as well. If you have relays on the transmitter, a fault relay will also be fired.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So thank you everybody for coming. We've got a few more minutes. If anybody has any questions, feel free to go ahead and speak into the microphone, or you can type them into the chat. Give everybody just a little bit.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
We recently, my name is Dan. I work for AbbVie Biopharmaceutical out in North Chicago, Illinois.
Okay.
JMI recently came out, probably the last couple months, and installed this Ultima X 5000. And in the past, most of all of our O2 sensors, the electrochemical sensors, had about shelf life of year and a half. So, am I correct that these sensors are different and they have a shelf life of 5 years? Because I logged in a little bit late.
Nope, no problem. Jason, go ahead. You want?
Yeah, when we talk about shelf life, we really want to. We're gonna still stand by our warranty. Our warranty is for 3 years, but you're gonna get 4 to 5 years of life out of these sensors that are warranted for 3 years. So is the shelf life 5 years? Professionally, I cannot say that. But in the real world of things, you're going to get, if this sits on your shelf for 3 years, you should get 4 to 5 years of life out of your oxygen sensor still.
So yeah, the MSA answer is 3 years warranty, 5 years expected life. What we found in the field is that it can last for much longer. If you're storing them in a dry, environment that maybe doesn't change temperature, things of that nature, we have found that they can last longer, but we can't, we don't have a warranty for that. So does that make sense?
It does, yes.
Okay.
Oh, also one more question. How old is this product line?
2 years, Jason? About 2 years?
5000 was launched in May of 2017.
Okay, so about 3 years.
Okay.
Or maybe 2 years plus COVID. How about that? So, yeah, it's great. So if anybody has the old MSA, that is still being supported, but we're doing a lot to get people to this one. for many of the features that we've discussed. That's one of the reasons. So the old Ultima X's, we still do support them. We will calibrate them. You can get some replacement parts and sensors, but this is the new one, and it's boy, it looks nice. I'll just say that.
If I could comment, the Ultima X has not been discontinued yet. When that does happen, there's going to be about a 5-year window, maybe 7 years, depends on our part suppliers. But we're going to support the Ultima X for 5 years after the discontinuation, at minimum, and that support will include spare sensors and replacement PC boards.
By Ultima X, do you mean XE or X5000?
The XE. So it's a different looking sensor, but it's just the old version of the MSA Ultima.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question.
Sure.
So here at AbbVie, we have about 20 Ultima X's, and we've got about 25 ToxGuard 2. So my question is, how long, if, and when will the support stop for ToxGuard 2 O2 monitors?
If I heard that correctly, is wondering if how long we're going to support the ToxGuard 2.
Yes.
So the ToxGuard 2 is still a viable product. There's no plans that I see in the future right now to discontinue that. But any plan to discontinue any product within MSA would follow that same plan of the old Ultima XE, where when it does get discontinued, it'll have at least a 5 to 7 year plan of support afterwards.
So just so everybody is educated on this, this is the ToxGuard 2 that he's mentioning, and yeah, there's no plan to discontinue it at this time. But it would be the same kind of thing. It would be supported for at least 5 years after it's officially discontinued. But for now, we're going to leave it as is.
Yeah, and then depending on who the customer was that asked that question, and what they're using it for, if you wanted to maybe get to a newer platform, we have the TG5000. Depending on sensor type and application, of course. I'm not sure what the end user is using it for.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to pull that up just so everybody can see it. I'm going to screen share one more time. This is the new version of the ToxGuard. Good idea, just to show them. This is what it looks like.
And I wouldn't even really call that the new version of the ToxGuard. That's just a new. Would I say a spin-off of the Ultima X5000? I would say it's more of a spin-off of the TriGuard, but you see it's of a plastic enclosure. It has strobes, it has horns. It's basically the Ultima X5000 board inside of that plastic box. Has the dual sensor capability, and then you have two relays and a fault that go out of there for end user use as well.
Cool.
Okay, well, does anybody have any more questions before I close out today? I can answer if you do. Okay, I think we got everything then. Thank you guys very much for coming. Enjoy your Friday. Enjoy your Friday lunch. You'll get a recording of this. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to anybody at JMI or sales@jmicompany.com is our general sales inbox. So, thanks so much, guys. We'll see you next week.
Take care.